Okay, welcome to another Orbiter 2010 video. And in this video, we're not actually going to do any flying. What I wanted to show in this video is something that we can do to maybe improve the aesthetic appeal of the default base here on the moon at Brighton Beach. And I was inspired to make this video after seeing a video that VideoSpaceFX, I think I'm saying his username correctly. He showed some, he recently uploaded a video where he was going to and from the moon. And I happened to notice in his video, and by the way, I'll provide a link to his channel down below. He has some pretty cool orbiter videos, and he has a lot of really cool Star Trek stuff that he's done, really good animations. So I'll put a link down below so you can check out his stuff. But anyway, I was looking at his moon and I noticed that his Brighton Beach looked quite a bit better than mine. And I was taken by surprise a little bit because I had already dressed up my Brighton Beach. So I asked him what add-on he was using and he told me. So I thought, well, that might actually make for a good video to kind of show people how to dress up Brighton Beach a little bit, because it's a little bland. This is the default, by the way. This is not my installation. This is a brand new orbiter installation that I put on my desktop just for the sake of making this video, but I wanted to have a starting point. This is what Brighton Beach looks like, you know, out of the box when you just get orbiter and install it for the first time. So you can see the ground is completely flat. It looks like gray metal, like you might see on an aircraft carrier. You know, there's no kind of texture to it. And I mean, this is all fine. You don't need to have a lot of aesthetics, because most of the time, let's face it, in orbiter, your view looks something like this, and it's a lot of times just looking at the black sky. But Dan Stuff points out in some of his updates that, you know, a little bit of aesthetics goes a long way. He's updating the Aero Freighter, and one of the updates that he's doing is specifically for the sake of just adding extra graphics inside the Aero Freighter just to make it look cool. Has absolutely no functionality, but it just looks cool. It adds aesthetics. So let's go ahead and make our Brighton Beach look better. So let me go ahead and exit out of Orbiter. And I'm kind of a fan of checklists and stuff, so I went through and made a set of directions. So step one, if you just want to follow along, you know, maybe pause the video and just do these one at a time, and then I'll provide a link where you can get these step one, step two. But, you know, step one, and you can obviously download this one first or this one first, it doesn't matter. But download Brighton Beach surface tiles, and you can get that from Orbit Hangar, and I'll provide a link in the description down below so you don't have to go there and try to find it, because sometimes it can be difficult to find things on Orbit Hangar. So that would be, you know, step one, get the surface tiles. And then step two, we want to download Brighton Beach Enhancement. And this was actually what VideoSpaceFX had that I didn't have, and that's why his looks better than mine, at least until I added it. So that would be also available here on Orbit Hangar. You can get Brighton Base, Brighton Base Enhancement. Now, something to note is that we're going to replace one of the default configuration files, and anytime you're going to replace a default file, it's probably a good idea to make a backup. So before we add these add-ons to our orbiter installation, let's first make a backup of that default configuration file that's going to be replaced. So we go to our orbiter directory, and you want to go to config moon base, and the file that we're going to replace is Brighton.cfg. So let me actually exit out of Orbiter because we don't want to make any changes while it's running. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut this file, and I'm going to make a new directory inside of my Orbiter directory, and I'm just going to call it, backups. And now I'm going to paste that file into this backups location. Okay, so let's just take a look at what I did. In my main Orbiter installation, I went into config moon base, and that Brighton.cfg file that was there, I cut it, and then I pasted it into this backups directory. So now I have an extra copy of it. Okay, hopefully you understand these types of, basic file management things. Okay, so that was step 3. Now let's unzip the Brighton Beach enhancement to our Orbiter installation directory. So here I have the Brighton Base, Brighton Base enhancement, and hopefully you know how zipping and unzipping and all of that works. There's a few ways we can do it. One way is just to simply double click on the zip file, and we can highlight all this information, and then I can just drag it over here to my Orbiter installation directory and let go. And then Windows is going to come up and ask me, this directory already exists, do I want to merge them together? And I'll say yes. And it says this directory exists, do I want to merge those? And I'll say yes. And again, of course, you can always just click down here and say do it for all these items. Now it's asking me if I want to replace the README file that came with Orbiter. That's actually fine. So I'm going to go ahead and let it replace that README file. If you want to, what you could also do, and I didn't realize this, I didn't realize it was going to replace that file, but you could also take the default README file and move it to your backups, so that way you've got an extra backup of the default README. Okay, so that was step 4. We now have all of the Brighton Base enhancement files inside of our Orbiter directory. So now we want to do the same thing with the Brighton Beach surface tiles. We want to go inside that zip file, and we can do a different method for unzipping. Instead of going in and dragging them over like that, another option is you can right click and drag it over and let go, and then you can click extract, and that will ask you where you want to extract it to, and we can just extract it this way. So that's just 2 different ways that you can extract your files, and I don't know which way is easier for the average person to do. And there's also a program called WinZip that some people have. It's actually a bad program. I recommend getting 7-Zip instead. But if you use WinZip, there's an option that you have to preserve directory structures as you're unzipping these files into your Orbiter directory. So this type of stuff is a little difficult for making videos because it gets into a lot of basic computer management type of stuff, and if you don't know how to get around on your own computer, then just adding add-ons can be difficult. So I'm just going to have to assume that you understand how to navigate your computer and how zip files work and all of that. Okay, so that was step 5. Now step 6 is that the Brighton Beach surface tile add-on, it places the Brighton.cfg file in the wrong place, and that's due to the fact that that add-on was made for Orbiter 2006. So we need to move that file to the correct location. So we'll come to our Orbiter main installation, and we'll come into the config directory, and there will be a file here now called Brighton.cfg, and you can see the date modified January 10th, 2013, 9:15 p.m. That's right now. That's the file I just added. And this is actually in the wrong location. So I'm going to cut it, and then I'm going to go to Moon, Base, and I'm going to paste it here. And this is what I was talking about with replacing one of the default files. So this file, the Brighton.cfg, this is the one that came with Orbiter that I moved to the backups folder. And the reason I moved it to the backups folder is because this add-on has a new Brighton.cfg, and we need to use this one instead. So that's step 6. Now step 7 is that we need to edit the Brighton.cfg. Just one moment. We need to edit that Brighton.cfg file according to the documentation that came with the Brighton Beach Surface Tiles add-on. So let's bring this up in an editor. And let's find the documentation that came with the surface tiles. And it's located here in the add-on doc. That's the directory that it created. So now let's open that up. And let's see what it has to say. It just says that these textures, mostly transparent, actually we don't care about this part. What it says is that Brighton.cfg must contain these lines: begin surface title list, and then it lists all this stuff here. So let's start with that. Let's find this portion in our Brighton.cfg. That's object list. Actually, let me see, is this something we have to add? Or let me just do a search here. Surfed. Okay. Apparently this is a section that we're going to have to add. And let me just check with my other installation to make sure I add it in the right place. Just bear with me one moment. I thought I had all the directions that I needed, but okay. Yeah, we can just put these at the end. Okay, so all we have to do is copy this and then, Control C. And then right here at the end of this file, but we have to put it above end object list, but basically between here and here. And then we'll Control V. So now you can see we just added this section into that long list. But I think I'm certain it has to be above this line, so make sure you paste it here above where it says end object list. And there's one other change that the Brighton Beach tiles wants us to make, and it's shows that the base actually looks a little better if you move the location of the base. Now, in some situations, that might actually be a problem if you have some scenario set up where you need to go to where the old base location was. But I've done this and I've never ran into any problem with it. So what I would do is here where it says location, I'm just going to put a semicolon in front of that. And what that does is it actually comments out the old location. And then right below it, so in other words, if I ever want to come back, I can just uncomment that section and it'll use the old location. But then right below it, I'm going to put location equals, and then I'm going to put in this new number that they're using. So I'm going to Control C and Control V, and you can see it's very close. It's only just a few, just a few fractions of a degree off. But we need to do this in two locations. We also need to update the VOR. So I'm going to do the same thing. Put a semicolon in front of the old one. Now I'm going to copy this line, Control C, and then right below it, Control V. And now I'm going to replace this with that. So now copy this part, Control C, and Control V. So now I've got the base in a slightly different location, and I've got the VOR updated so that it knows that the base has been slightly moved. And if for any reason you have any problems, and I've done this myself and I can't imagine that you ever would, but you can always just come back to this file and comment that out and uncomment that, comment that, and then uncomment that, and now your base is back where it used to be. But it actually looks better if you do put it in this new location. So now we're going to save that file, and we are done with that, and we're done with that. We're almost done. Let's go back to our list. Now the last thing that we have to do is edit Base.cfg according to the documentation that came with the Brighton Beach enhancement add-on. And this one's actually even easier. Now, unfortunately, the Brighton Beach enhancement add-on put its doc file here. Yeah, I think it's called About This add-on. It should put it here, but nevertheless, this is where it's located. So we're going to open this. And actually, that's not the doc file that we need. It's the README. So we need to open that README. And now we need to open the Base.cfg, which is located in config. And if you want to be extra careful, we can copy it. This time we're doing a copy, not a cut. We're going to copy it, and then we're going to go to our backups, and we're going to paste an extra copy in here. This way we've got an extra backup. Now we'll go to that config directory, and we're going to open Base.cfg. And all we have to do this time is copy all these lines, these FCD lines. So Control C, and we can put them anywhere in this list. It doesn't matter where they go. You can see here where it says begin textures. They just have to go somewhere between there and there. But I think it makes the most sense to kind of keep things organized how it is here. So instead of throwing them in at the bottom, I'm going to add them there. Kind of keep up with the naming convention. And that's it. So now we'll save that, close that out, and now let's launch Orbiter finally and see what we've accomplished. Take a sip of water. And let's go back to that same scenario that we were looking at. Delta Glider, Brighton Beach, and hit Launch Orbiter. And voila, this is what we have now. And you can see that now we have a lot of texture on the ground. These are the surface tiles. Without the surface tiles, we would just have that plain, you know, like gunmetal gray without any detail. And all this extra stuff, these are just extra buildings and extra details that make Brighton Beach look a little bit better. Actually, it looks quite a bit better. And I've also just to compare, I have these screenshots that I took so you can see the before and after. So again, this is what it looked like before. You can see that plain gray ground. This is what it looks like now. And that's the old building. And that's what it looks like now. So we've got quite a bit of, you know, nicer detail. And this probably doesn't look as sharp as it normally does on my computer, because this is the standard built-in client, and it looks better if you use the D3, D9 client. So I'll show you what that looks like here in a second. But again, that's the default. And I've got one more graphic. You can see on the ground it's just plain gray, you know, not very realistic. And again, it's just an aesthetics thing. You know, it's not going to improve your flight or anything, but it's going to make the time that you spend at Brighton Beach look a lot better. Okay, let me close this out real quick. Close this. Close this. This. And let me bring up my normal orbiter installation, which has which I'm running the D3, D9 client. And we'll go to that same scenario. And I don't know how well it shows up in the video, but with the D3, D9 client, you know, everything just is a lot smoother. It's not quite as pixelated. It's not quite as grainy. So everything just looks quite a bit better. So, and then if you zoom out, you know, you can see as you come in here to Brighton Beach, you know, you've got a nice target. And the thing about moving the base, by the way, if the base wasn't moved, then the default location puts the base, I believe it's like over here. It's not quite inside of this area where we have these surface tiles. So the default base location is out here, so you don't really get any visual improvement. In fact, let me show you. Let me exit out, and I can just really quickly update. I can just really quickly update my Brighton.cfg to put the base in the old location just by uncommenting that one line that I showed you before. And that's done. Let me exit out and reopen it. Brighton Beach. And and this is what it's talking about. You can see how by the default location, where this is where Brighton Beach is at, you know, by the default orbiter installation, it sort of straddles the line of the surface tiles. So you kind of have half the base on the surface tiles and half the base off. It doesn't look it doesn't look quite as good. It's not horrible, but it doesn't look quite as good. So if I just simply exit back out and change that line in Brighton.cfg, that location line, save the file, and relaunch Orbiter. Probably don't even have to exit Orbiter or exit the launch pad. And, well, my ships are in the wrong place, but other than that, you can see it moved the base from here over to here. And by having it over here, we're not straddling the line, so it just looks better. Okay, I think you get the idea. Hopefully that was informative, and hopefully if you want to make your Brighton Beach look better, you're able to follow this list of instructions and follow along with the video and get everything done. If you have any questions, leave your questions in the comments and I will be sure to answer them. And I'll see you in the next video.